Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am Varshini from Sri Venkateshwara College of Engineering pursuing Data Science Engineering. Today we are going to be looking into the subject POP, that is Principles of Programming, and our topic for today will be Introduction to Control Statements in C. So control statements are the statements that are used to control the flow of the program. There are basically three types. There are branching statement, looping statements and jump statements. We also have a flow chart. Under branching statements, we have if else if, and switch statement. In iterative statements or looping statements, we have while, do while, and for loop. And in jump statements, we have break, continue, and go to. Conditional statements. The if statement, the if else statement, the if else ladder, nested if, and switch statement are the different types. We also have example syntaxes. We'll discuss each of them separately. First, we have the if statement. The if statement in C is a control flow statement that is used to execute a block of code based on a condition. It evaluates an expression that results in a Boolean value, true or false, 0 and 1. If the expression evaluates to true any non-zero value, the block of code inside the if statement is executed. So, as the name itself suggests, if the expression that we are providing the program with is true, the part of the code or the block of the code inside the curly braces or the block will be executed. We have a syntax example. This declaration, the keyword is if, and in the bracket we are going to define the condition that, for example, if x is greater than y, and then we enter the values of x and y. If x is greater than y, say x is 2 and y is 1, and when the statement is true because x is greater than y, this block of code, that is printf, a is greater than b, is going to be printed. We also have the example, the similar example as I told, a is greater than b. Then if b is greater than a, the a is greater than b, this text or the string is not going to be printed. If else statement. If else statement is a decision making statement that is used to decide whether a part of the code will be executed or not based on a specific condition. If the given condition is true, then the code inside the block is executed, otherwise the code in the else block is executed. Now, the if statement is also called single way branching, but in case of if else, this is called two-way branching. So we have two blocks here. One is if, when the other is else. Where if is the similar as the single if statement. If this condition is true, in here in case if a is greater than b, a is greater than b is printed. But what if b is greater than a? Say a is 2 and b is 5. In that case, because this if statement is true, then the else block, or because this if statement is true, the else statement, that is a is not greater than b, is going to be printed. Then when else part is being executed, the if part is not executed because that condition was held false. Now we have the else if ladder. The ladder allows you to evaluate multiple test expressions and execute different statements. Here, when the if statement's test expression is evaluated to be true, the body of only the if statement gets executed. Otherwise, it moves on to check the expression of the if else statement. Now, we have seen single way branching and two way branching. In this case, you can do multi way branching or more than two ways of branching. We have the if condition similar to the first one, where the condition, if it is true, it is going to be executed. Next we have the if else statement, but that is the second condition to check. Here we can check two conditions, and in the previous one condition and two options of outputs were available. Here the second condition, if the first condition is true, it will check the second condition, and if the second condition is true, it will execute the block of code under the if else statement, and if it is false, it will go to the else part of the code. You can see if a is greater than b, print a is greater than b. That is a normal if loop. And we have if else a is double equal to b, then printf a is equal to b. Now first it will check whether a is greater than b. If a is not greater than b, it will come to if else statement, that is our second condition, to check whether the two numbers that we are providing are equal or not. And if that is true, it will print a is equal to b, and if a is not equal to b, then it will print that a is less than b. Because it is not greater, it is not equal, then it is always going to be less than b. Next, we have the switch statement. It allows us to execute multiple operations for the different possible values of a single variable called the switch variable. Here, we can define various statements in multiple cases for different value of a single variable. We can use the ladder or if-else ladder for cases when we know for times when we have 2 to 3 branching statements, but in case of switch statements, we'll have one expression that we are going to check for different cases where we have in the syntax case 1, case 2, case 3, or we'll also give a default value. We'll talk about it later, but in case the switch statement is encountered while compiling, the expression is checked. Then it checks if the case in statements will be applicable or no. Then case 2, we can add n number of cases, 2, 3, 4, or any number of cases. We have something called a default case where in case all the cases we are providing, for say we provide some 10 cases for a variable being a certain number, and if all 10 cases are false, then we have to have a default expression to be executed when all of the above cases are false. So that statement or that block of the code is called the default code that is executed when all other cases are not true or all other cases are giving the binary 0 output. Then for example, we have switch of day. That is the expression we are checking. Case 1, printf Monday. If the day we have entered is Monday, then the break statement is encountered and it skips the loop and continues the rest execution of the statement. If it is not Monday, then it comes to check if it is Tuesday, and if it is Tuesday, it will break and come out. If not, then the default statement, it is not Monday, it is not Tuesday, then it is some other day that is being going to be executed if both of the cases are false. We are completed with the first part of the control statement. Now we are going to see the iterative statements or looping statements. They are used in scenarios where we are trying to repetitive tasks are trying to be accomplished. For example, the date and time display on our thing has to be done again and again throughout the day, even when the computer is not being used technically. So such statements, one block of code would perform this operation once, but because these operations have to be done in an iterative way or in a repetitive way, these statements are called iterative statements or looping statements. We have three types of looping statements. It's a for loop, while loop, and a do while loop. We'll look into each of them separately. First up, we have the for loop. The for loop in C language is used to iterate through the statements or a part of a program several times. It is frequently used to traverse the data structures like an array or a linked list. Now, we have the syntax. For the syntax, we have the for, which is the keyword. We have to initialize, we have to give a condition, or we have to give an operation that is an increment or a decrement. In this case, we are initializing for I equals to 0. That is the value of I will start, or the initial value will be 0, and it will keep incrementing or decrementing based on the condition that we provide at the end. Next, we have I less than 10, which is a condition where if the value of I that we are considering is less than 10, then this part of the loop is executed. If not, the loop is just terminated and moves on with the further execution of the program. Now, for example, we take I as I don't know 5, then we are going to print the value of I, and then it is going 5, and then it is going to repeat this task because next it will change the value of I into 6 because I plus plus is a single increment. So from 5 it will change to 6, and 6 is also less than 10. So again the value of 6 is printed. Then again it goes to the loop. 6 becomes 7 because of the increment decrement operation. 7 is checked if it is less than 10. Yes, 7 is less than 10. So 7 is increased to 8 and the value 7 is printed again. This continues until the condition is true or until the condition is false, and when the condition is false, it moves on, it comes out of the loop or the block of code and continues with the further execution. We have while loop. While loop in C is used to evaluate a test condition and iterate over the loop body until the condition returns true. The loop ends when the condition returns false, and this loop is also known as pre-tested loop because it is commonly used when number of iterations is known and known to the user ahead of time. We use a while loop when we already know how many times we have to loop it. For example, we are going to consider the same example. We know that if we are initialized from 0 and we have to consider less than no, we will know how many times this loop will be executed. Whereas in case of a for loop, it will be executing until the condition becomes true. But here the programmer already knows how many times it is going to be executed, and it is going to repeat the execution, or it is going to iterate until we get the value as false. Once the value is false, it will move on with the further execution of the code. The do while loop is a control flow statement in C program. Using this loop, a piece of code can be executed repeatedly as long as a specific condition is true. For example, we have do of the code to be executed, that is, do this job or this much of a process while this condition is true. While for here we have do printf of I. Next is I increment. Every time you print I, and you have to increment the value of I. That is the work that is assigned to this particular code, and this operation is only going to execute until this while condition, that is I is less than 10, is equal. Once the I value becomes equal to 10 or greater than 10, this part of the do code will not be executed. We have also completed the iterative statements now, and next up we have jump statements. There are three jump statements in general: break, continue, and go to. Some also consider an extra statement, but in our video we'll be seeing only three of these statements. In break statement is it exists or terminates the loop or switch statement based on a certain condition without executing the remaining code. We came across the break statement especially in the switch statements, that is why I've mentioned it here. So break statement, what it basically does is, when the break statement is encountered, it exits the loop if the previous condition is true. So for example, I say I is greater than 10, and then the entered value of I is going to be 11. Because 11 is greater than 10, the execution, even though there is further code in the loop, it will break and it will skip to the outside of the block of code and continue execution from there. This is the use of break statement. It is usually used in loops to give a temporary termination to the loop, or in switch statements to reduce the runtime and such things, because unnecessary code execution will be eliminated. Next we have continue statement. Continue statement is used to skip the remaining code after the continue statement within a loop and jump to the next iteration of the loop. When continue statement is encountered, loop control immediately jumps to the next iteration by skipping the lines of code written after it within the loop body. Now for instance, we have a particular program that is about, or a block of code that has about 15 lines or 15 executing statements. And then now when the continue statement is encountered, what will happen is it will move on to the next iteration. For example, you're going on with the third iteration, and if that condition comes true and we have a continue statement, it will not continue the, for example, the continue statement is a seventh line, and it will not execute the 8, 9, 10 and the remaining lines. It will move on to the next iteration. So that is when we are going to use the continue statement. This also makes the program faster because unnecessary program lines are going to be omitted. Go to statement is a statement used to jump to a specific point from a function, where it is used to transfer the program control to a labeled statement within the same function. So as the definition itself suggests, if we are in one point of a program and we want to jump or move directly to another point of a program, so in such scenarios we use the go to statement in C. Now let us look into a few control statements uses, that is where basically we use these control statements. One, it is importantly used to control the flow of programs, and in such cases, where we, for example, we have to make the program to choose which path to follow, and in such flow programs we are going to use the control statements. Now we have decision making, because we use statements like if and if else and ladder if and all these looping statements. They help us to make automated control of the program, whether based on the inputs provided, the program itself will make its decisions, and in only if the case is specified, but it prevents human intervention for decision making, or basic decisions are taken by the looping statements and control statements. Now we have skip over to the code, and as we discussed the go to statement and break statement, unnecessary execution of lines that are not relevant after a point. At some point it is not relevant to execute those lines. All these unwanted executions are skipped by using these statements. And with that, we have come to an end of our presentation. So I would like to thank you all for watching the video. Thank you.